to the extent that he could into various U.S. defense websites looking for evidence of a UFO cover-up, and what he found on the U.S. Space Command site around November of 2000, he found a list of what he said were officer names under the heading non-terrestrial officers. He also found a list of what were called fleet-to-fleet transfers, which had a list of ship names. None of those names were correspondent to any U.S. Navy ships. Couldn't remember the names, unfortunately. Then was arrested in 2 years after that, in 2002. And to this day, he's in danger of extradition. His fate is not resolved. In the early years, the UFO angle was very, very prominently displayed. This guy looking for the UFO cover-up finds XYZ, is arrested, wow. Look up the McKinnon case and track the coverage in subsequent years. And the longer we go into this, the UFO thing, if it even appears anywhere, it's at the bottom, tucked away. And now he's simply called by the Pentagon the greatest Pentagon hacker in history, which is a load of rubbish. Absolute rubbish. But this is, so in other words, the whole UFO angle has been very, very subtly siphoned out of the story, and that's what it's all about. And the fact is, I think Gary McKinnon did find evidence of a secret space program. That's, I think, the single most logical conclusion. Clark McClelland, this is a statement he put on abovetopsecret.com, if you go to ATS. He just writes here, I worked at Cape Canaveral in the Kennedy Space Center from 1958 to 1992. There are many mysteries that have been discovered during the years that we have been exploring the moon, sun, and planets. The former CEO of Lockheed Skunk Works was visiting the Cape many years ago. I asked him a question. This is Ben Rich. Ben Rich said, Clark, black budget dollars have taken the USA military at least 50 plus years beyond the present understanding of the general public and how far we are technologically advanced. You have no idea where we have gone out there. I said, Mars, sir? He looked at me and his head movement said yes. Are there monuments on the moon, Mars, etc.? Bet on it. Again, that's a thread from Above Top Secret. Then we have some photographic anomalies. But this is a very famous photograph. It's called the Shard, and in the background the tower. And the blur, the tower behind it, about 7 miles, 10 kilometers or more high. And this is one that John Lear, again, the evidence that John Lear is convinced looks like strip mining on the moon. I have to say the photograph does look something like strip mining. I don't. If you compare it with photographs of actual strip mining operations, this is a lot more involved. But it does, you know, have a kind of at least superficial similarity, and you could say this is worthy of a follow-up investigation. Then we have the monolith on Phobos. There's a picture of Phobos, the irregular moon of Mars, one of them. Only recently discovered, as far as I know. It's fascinating to me. I mean, absolutely. I mean, look at that. That's a monolith to your top right. That thing is shaved off. It looks pretty darn squared off to me. That does not look like a natural object. Not at all. When Buzz Aldrin talked about it, because he seems to be making these various statements that just are right out there. You know, about being followed on the way to the moon. Well, that's pretty darn interesting. And then he makes a comment on this. But of course, every time he makes a statement, then he runs away from it.
Thank you both for your time. Terrific to have you with us. Firstly, Charles, can you tell us your story of how you managed to come into contact with these beings as you worked with the military?
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I enlisted in the Air Force in July 1964, and I was trained as a weather observer, and I was sent to Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada, outside Las Vegas, Nevada, and for 2.5 years I was sent up to the gunnery ranges up at Indian Springs, and I was given a clearance to allow me to go anywhere in dreamland as long as I was alone. I discovered that up there at the north end of Indian Springs Valley, which you can see on the map, in the state of Nevada here in America, that there was a base which the U.S. Air Force maintained for a group of extraterrestrials who were tall and white. And I, as the duty weather observer, was allowed to go up there, or they were allowed to come down to where I was. And the interaction took place over more than 2 years.
Wow.
During those 2 years, I also came across, I also interacted to a lesser extent with the Roswell Greys, and I've also personally talked with the extraterrestrials that I call the Norwegians with 24 teeth.
And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers. And at that point I was very concerned because I knew we were working in compartmentalized security. He had breached security, and I was actually frightened at that moment, and I did not question him any further. And a few moments later, someone did come into the room. I worked there for 3 more days, and I remember going home and naively thinking, I can't wait to hear about this on the evening news. And here it is, more than 30 years later, and I hope we hear about it tonight. And I will testify under oath before Congress. Scientists from all over the world. I was stunned, actually, to see people at a NASA project from all over the world that didn't make any sense to me. I was taken into the laboratory where the equipment was malfunctioning. I couldn't repair it in the dark. I asked to have it removed. A airman second class was in the dark room at that time. I was also an airman second class. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon.
You convinced that we're not alone in the universe?
Oh, I'm no sure we're not alone in the universe. Now, have we been able to identify for sure where the other planets are? No, we have not. Certainly not in our solar system. But they've identified quite a number of planets now that very likely could be life-bearing planets.
Same mission next day, still STS-96, 1999. What you're going to see is a very fast streaking object. It's going to go diagonally from the top, your top left down to the bottom right. It's very quick. You'll see it more than once. And then what you'll see is another object going in the same direction, and it will slow down toward the end. You'll see it happen. So let's take a look here. Keep your eye. There it goes, the bright, fast out, and that's the other one. You can see it slowing down. That's a city below. We're going to see it again. That object slowed down. Here it is again at reduced speed. Now, you know, I don't know of any dust particle that can slow down, or any craft in space that can change direction or slow down like that.
Clear.
It was just probably one of the craziest nights of activity I've ever experienced.
Michael Lee Hill is the self-described UFO enthusiast who's releasing this never-before-seen video. According to Hill, the video was shot in November on the east side near his home in Eastlake. It obviously shows something, but what is what's up for debate.
I've been filming these for a long time, and it's just grown to the point where closer and closer.
I go outside and I look up in the sky and I see them up there. Every so often you see strange lights blinking on and off.
It's not hard to find people who believe the lakeshore is a hotbed for extraterrestrial activity. Last year, in fact, Fox 8 revealed these images of similar lights over the lake. And after our stories aired, a team from the Cleveland Ufology Project tracked the lights. The organization was founded back in 1952, and its members consider themselves experts who determined these were airplanes. But now, Michael says you can't debate it anymore.
The fact that this remains in the screen and is not moving, I believe, negates any notion that it's an aircraft.
Now, it goes without saying, but of course we'll say it anyway. NASA, the military, no one will comment on any of this.
in Earth orbit. And these are all, of course, looking down at Earth from the space shuttle. The guy running the, just determining who sees what on the NASA TV is called the IMCO, and that person can control, if they think it gets a little too crazy, often they'll black it out like this, but then they, you know, lighten it up. One thing Jeff pointed out is that on the NASA station, there's a tremendous amount of what seemed to be intentional interference to degrade the quality of the video. And I think he made some sense on that. There are these two objects and others. It's hard, some of them are hard to see, and the resolution here isn't quite the best. But you can see that there are things moving around that beg an explanation. This one's almost done.
This latest video that we have is extremely interesting. I want you to tell us at home whether or not you think this is an abduction.
Take a close look at this. Field of cows.
Well, how do you explain that then? There you go.
Yep. Oh, that's an abduction.
That is definitely an abduction.
Can we do that one more time, Mr. Director?
Why wouldn't, if you're a UFO, if you're an alien, why wouldn't you take our prime beef? Which is the best in the world.
And flying down range, we got all three stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, and there were three people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16mm camera and a screen setup. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera, on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as a decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile tracking radar, everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, the object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
Well, I don't see it. Why didn't you see this when you were shooting it?
Well, it was 600 to 800 miles away from us.
Oh, I got you. They confiscated.
Well, first of all, the Major Mansman said to me, "What was that? Were you guys screwing around up there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Then tell me what that was." And I said, "We got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant, you are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen."
Hold on, guys. I'll be right back. I gotta take a break. Okay, that's weird.
As far as you're concerned, this didn't
A couple of things. First of all, the sun had not yet risen, so they were not in sunlight. And he's trying to make it sound like, oh, yeah, well, the sun's almost about to rise. You know, he was obviously not saying what everyone in the world who would have looked at that would have been thinking. He couldn't. Now, this is actually the zoom of the same object, so you can just take another look at it. Pulsing with quite interesting regularity. And it also appears to me, anyway, that the lens is still, here we go, keeping on to it. It's moving, zooming in, and that's the end of it. I have 5 minutes. Really? Uh-oh. Really? All right. I'll do my best. This is an object doing a U-turn. This is my last of the space clips. I'll show it again. Just take a look. Kind of nifty. Now here's an enhanced version of the same clip, and you can see it actually maneuvering as it goes back and forth. What is that? That's from 2005, STS. Another one, this is from 2000, STS-106. Now this is a fascinating one because you will see a definite triangular formation in motion. The sun had not risen at this point, so there's, you can't blame it on reflectivity. These objects, as you will see, are in formation, but they're not in a locked formation. They maneuver within small parameters. There is a U.S. Navy satellite called the NOS. This is a trio of satellites that orbit, but their orbit is higher, much higher than that of the space shuttle. The first with the objects highlighted. And you can see also how they sort of maneuver slightly within their circle. So it's not an exact maneuvering, but they are in a formation. And now I'm going to show you, this is 50% speeded up without any highlighting, but now that you know what to look for, I bet you that you'll have an easy time seeing this, even though it's faster. Here it goes. There they are. I'll do it again for you so you can see. It's kind of in double time. So here it is again. And here's another one. Same mission, STS-106, September 2000. This is over the city of Chicago. Now here, this is fascinating, because this is you have an audio clip of the NASA commentator. And he is absolutely at a loss of how to describe. That bright thing in the center, that's what you're going to be looking at. And it's actually pretty humorous.
Atlantis is approaching sunrise as it approaches the Great Lakes area. This a view of Chicago, and also some ice crystals or other items being illuminated by the rising sun. Atlantis moving into sunrise in just about the next minute or so. As that occurs, ice crystals or water that's been dumped overboard from the shuttle is always illuminated in the close vicinity of the spacecraft. Again, that view of Chicago, though.
With me, I very early on knew that to deny the reality of UFOs and other phenomena that occurs would be denying myself.
So as a communicator, you're definitely...
You don't always tell the others what's going on. Remember I told you you feel it?
You feel, yes, you feel what they feel, and they feel what you feel.
Mm-hmm. And so, you don't always address it, because one of the things that you may feel like, if they're saying that they are a guest, if our military is saying, well, this is one of our guests, they're not treating that entity as a guest. And what's happening is that you are feeling what that entity is feeling.
Uh-huh.
And one situation, I even helped one of them escape, and that right there was not telling them everything that was being said.
I'm curious what went on when you dealt with that. Was it, first of all, what kind of an entity was it? And I understand that they're being held prisoner. But how was it that you were able, and in fact, Dan Bursch talks about the same thing.
Well, I don't know whether it was a Stargate or what, but in order, on the inside where we had this entity, if we were to, and there's a tape that talks about this, which gives a whole lot more detail. But we went ahead, and if they were to try to extract this entity from inside where we were at, then there'd have been people killed. And this entity would not accept that. And you could feel what was going, you could feel what it felt. That's the best way to put it. And I'm trying to tell this without going into any real certain details. But I convinced the person that I always called the Colonel, and all throughout that's what I was calling. We went ahead and I said, you know, he needs to show me something, but everybody has to be cleared from here. It's just got to be me and him. And everybody went ahead, left. There was one Spec 5 that stayed there to help me, and I said, "We're going to cut this screen fence back here, or the storm fence, and we can get in trouble for that." I says, "Yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking you to just drop off the bolt cutters and then beat feet." Well, he didn't. He went ahead and he cut the wires for me, and we got the entity outside. By the time they found out that we had the entity outside the perimeter, they went ahead and was very upset. And now they were even to the point where they even tried to shoot the entity. But the entity was now in a position where it was a bright, bright, bright light that came down, and I didn't even get to see the craft. And maybe it was because I just wasn't looking. But all of a sudden, this entity was there, then it wasn't. Then, of course, the guy I always called the colonel, he went ahead and told me, well, I'd be court-martialed. Then, well, we're going to overlook it this time, but don't let that happen again. And, of course, I was chastising him. If they're supposed to be our guests, why were we treating them cruel and treating them as prisoners? As a matter of fact, even worse than prisoners. I have never seen either movie of the Manchurian Candidate.
Okay.
And the one thing that we had identified by the time I got out, 57 different species. And they were affectionately called the Heinz 57. I understand there's some phrase in one of those movies about that. Gee, I'd love to say there's only 2 or 3 races, or only 4 or 5, or even 1. I'd love to say that. But with what I know, if I change anything that I do know, then it's not reality. It's just going ahead saying things that people want to hear.
Well, why would you say you would want to say there was only 1 or 2?
Oh, well, some people, well, we could find your story more believable if you could say.
I see.
And, gee, can't this entity be gray because it'd be more believable? What do you want, a story that's believable, or do you want the truth?
Here's something, I don't know if it's the firing of a weapon, but you're going to see 2 objects moving in a perpendicular way. So one's going to come straight up from below, and the other one is going to miss it, but not by much, going in a horizontal manner. This is near the city of New Orleans. So here it is, going straight up, and then the other object going across, at right angles to each other. And we'll show this at slower speed. Here it is, slower. Can you see that? You can see that a little bit. It's not the clearest, but.
That are very likely alien craft. Now, not all of them are. I suspect some of them are homegrown. I suspect that in the last 60 years or so, that there has been some back engineering and the creation of this type of equipment, but it's not nearly as sophisticated yet as what the apparent visitors have.
So, as part of this, as part of you knowing about this, and also going public with it, are you worried for your own safety with this kind of stuff, or are you convinced that the
no, I think those days are gone. That used to be a concern. Among the people on the inside, but I don't think they're knocking anybody off for that anymore, or doing drastic things to them.
What do you think the intent of the aliens is? Is it hostile or peaceful?
No. It's not hostile. It's pretty obvious that if it were hostile, we'd have been gone by now.
Really? I mean, what?
We could have been.
Wow.
We had no defense, if that's what their real intent was.
And what are we talking? What do they look like? Are we talking like, the traditional sort of?
You've seen some of the pictures. The pictures that I know of, some of them are these little people that look strange to us. And as far as I know, from my contacts that have had contact, that's pretty accurate.
Wow. Do you think other people who were involved in the moon landings know about this?
Some of them do. But again, it's like other people. If you're interested enough to dig into it and want to know about it, you can know about it.
Because, listen, I know you're a busy guy, and I know there's other people who need...
Yeah, this phone, they're not leaving me alone with this other phone that's ringing all the time, and I'm by myself here.
This has been easily one of the most significant conversations of my life. Unbelievable. I want to thank you for joining us.
You bet.
And Dr. Ed Mitchell, that's an...
As you can see, the water is like green. I've lived here my whole life and I've never seen anything like this. Largest algal bloom ever.
The utility has been monitoring more than 900 storage tanks since about 300 tons of radioactive wastewater leaked from a tank on August 20th. TEPCO officials say one of Saturday's readings was 1,800 millisieverts per hour. Radiation at this level can kill a person in 4 hours. In another area, radioactivity of 230 millisieverts per hour was measured at a puddle underneath a pipe connecting tanks.
Esas mamadas que están allá arriba en el edificio, güey. Ah, no mames, se ve bien raro, güey. No, está bien raro. ¿Tienes un cigarro o qué? ¿Esto sabe todo? Eso es toda madre. Lo mandamos a Canal 4 en la serie. No mames, son como extraterrestres, qué pedo. Son extraterrestres, güey. ¿Es qué? Como un extraterrestre. Sí, cabrón. A ver. Dele. Ah, no mames, dele, güey. O sea, se ve un vato ahí, pero se ve bien raro, güey.
Suppose we finally encounter the advanced alien race we've always looked for, but due to a quirk of the universe, they move through time in the opposite direction that
Character from an old episode of The X-Files, but Edgar Mitchell is actually a former astronaut who walked on the moon, and he says, get this, space aliens are real and that they frequently visit Earth.
Know how many or where or how they're doing it, but they've been observing us and here for quite some time, and we see these craft all the time.
How many civilizations could there be, or do you believe there are?
Billions. We got billions and billions of stars in a galaxy, and billions of galaxies, and it doesn't take but a few planets around a few stars to have quite a few civilizations.
Well, not only does he believe in aliens, he also believes the U.S. government is covering up evidence of aliens right here on Earth.
The reason for the denial was, number one, they didn't know if these were hostile and could we protect ourselves from them. Didn't want the Soviets to know, so they devised to lie about it and cover it up.
In the past, Mitchell also admitted to trying unofficial experiments involving ESP during the Apollo 14.
So three different species of aliens you're talking about there, Charles.
Yeah, can you describe what they look like, what they were like?
Well, I'll start with the tall whites. They're thinner than we are, and they're very frail. Throughout most of their life, they are the same height as I am, 5'11", but they live 10 times longer than humans. They live 600 or 800 years.
Wow.
But they don't age the way we do. When they get to be equivalent to a human of about 40 years, that means when they're about 400 years, they start growing again instead of aging as humans.
Right.
And then they go, and this continues, and so that by the time they get to be 600 or 800 years old, they're very tall, 8.5, 9, or 10 feet tall, but this is not necessarily good because their skeleton grows more than their internal organs. And so there comes a time after 600 or 800 years when their skeleton, their body is tall, but their organs can't support it.
The
at which time they die a natural death, because they're just flesh and blood creatures like we are. If they injure themselves, it takes them 10 times longer to heal up than a human.
You had them there. You were working with the aliens on any particular project, or was the military working with the aliens on a particular project? Was there, I don't know, technology sharing or, you know, botanical cross-fertilization?
The U.S. Air Force, and I'm speaking of the mid-1960s, was willing to give them anything they asked for. When I first met them, I was very afraid of them, and every human I met when you come across them out in the desert was naturally very afraid of them, and they were even more afraid of us. It's like running into a gorilla in the wild where the gorilla is on his home ground. So they had to go through a process of becoming used to being around humans before they could take part in the technology transfer program. I, as the weather observer, was the test human. As an enlisted man, I was expendable, you know.
Sure.
I was the one they send out to
Always
and say,
the weather guy.
just talking to Charlie. And
Marie, let's bring you in. You've never seen these things for yourself. Are you a believer? Because probably a lot of people watching this morning are going to think, I don't believe him. It's ridiculous. How could it be possible?
Well, Charles was very intelligent in that he waited until we'd been married a couple of months before he told me about the extraterrestrials coming into his barracks at night. And he said, well, what do you think? And I said, I really don't care. I have never given any thought as to whether they exist or not, and I really don't care. I've known Charles. We've been married over 43 years. He may be a character, but I am his character reference, and I totally believe that this is real. Furthermore, we have had confirmations from people all over the world. We have never had any serious tire kickers, you know, people who say, well...
Well, certainly there seems to be a lot of people, around the world who would support your view on this, who seem to have had their own experiences, but probably not quite as intimately as you. Now, unfortunately, we are going to have to leave.
I've ever seen that before. Wow.
Look, anyways, look. And then we come into that right there, and as you can see in the background, that does not look right. That actually looks kind of sinister. Is that a fucking tornado coming down here? If that's a tornado, I'm gonna sit here and watch it. Too many deaths, too many years. Okay. Right off in your distance, does that not look like something's gonna pop out? No, that looks like a tornado.
That looks like a real tornado.
I'm gonna laugh.
Right over me now. All right, folks, we got a big, humongous storm coming up here. Look at this. This thing is wicked. This thing is coming together quick too. Just come out. This thing is coming together quick too. This thing is coming together quick too. Just come out of nowhere. This is looking back to the south. It's about 5:13. This is looking to west southwest. And look at this monster. Tornado already on the ground. I'd like to thank the weather cards for letting us know this was coming, which they didn't. I mean, this is about the blackest I have ever seen it. Look at this. This is looking to the north. And we'll go back up here to the east. The wind is starting to pick up. Look at this.
Eyewitnesses say sharp gusts of wind that overturned cars and left a swath of damaged buildings near Tokyo came from a tornado. One witness reported seeing something that looked like a tornado towering more than 300 meters high. Another said the sky suddenly darkened and she saw a big black tornado in front of her.
Meteorologists say a tornado that struck an area near Tokyo was the result of some unusual weather.
The cloud wasn't even 500 meters above the ground. That's really low.
agency have surveyed the damage. They've determined the tornado's strength. They say it measured 1 or higher on a scale between 0 and 5.
Well, there is a warming trend taking shape in the waters along North America's west coast, and it's raising big red flags with climate experts. From Baja California to Vancouver Island, scientists believe a massive concentration of warmer than usual water off the Pacific coast has the potential to seriously impact the ocean's ecosystem.
Crazy way. It's going that way. It's going to my house. That's wicked. You can even see it spinning, eh? Hello, buddy. Hello, buddy. How's you doing? That's crazy. Look at the rain or whatever it is.
Road coming up. Whoa! Nice! So I just hold the button down.
What that information is this. In 1995, our government commissioned a project to place into the public water supply, into the public food distribution system, a very small device, a nano-sized device with a microprocessor. It is an electronic device, and it is about the size of 1 or 2 grains of sand. It took years to develop, but they developed it, they've perfected the technology, they've tested it, and as of today, according to their estimates, 85% of the population has one of these devices inside of their bodies. Now these, you could say you're infected, in other words. You have been infected with one of these devices. They're incredibly small. They can barely be seen with the naked eye. They have to be removed from the medium that they are suspended in. It could be food, it could be water, but if you take it out and if you put it on a table, preferably a black surface, and you look at it, you're going to be able to see it. It's very hard. It's opaque. But let me put it this way. You'd never know it was there. If you've consumed it, which you probably have, as I said, 87% of the population has one of these in their bodies, right, as presently, as the military has estimated. Okay, so what is it? Why did the military develop this device and put it in the water supply and try to basically infect the entire U.S. population with it? Well, it's a very simple device, folks. It is designed to kill you. It is designed to terminate you. That's what it does. It's very simple. It doesn't really do anything else. Now, how does it kill you? It goes something like this. It is, again, the size of a grain of sand or so, a little bit bigger. It is a nano device. It contains a microprocessor, contains a receiver, and it can receive a transmission, radio transmission. Once it receives this radio transmission, which is very specific, and can only let me put it this way, it is a frequency that is only our military uses and only knows about. It's not going to just be randomly activated while you're walking down the street. So it's activated by this signal. Now, how do they do it? Well, their cell towers cover 98% of this country in terms of coverage. Cell towers, radio towers. In addition to that, our military has spent about 5 years setting up a proprietary system, that of coverage, not in addition to the cell towers. So what they've done in any large population center, they have installed transmitters, very small, and they're in strategic locations. They cover every block of every large city and even small cities, and this has been set up over the past 5 years. The reason they want to do that is they want to be able to target these populations very specifically in a very small locality. Okay? Now, what do these devices do? Okay, they kill you. How do they do it? I don't know fully, but what they do is it induces flu-like symptoms in the body. It causes the body to release antibodies that, in addition to causing flu-like symptoms, it will cause your body to produce antibodies that are indicative of a flu virus infection. You will die within 10 to 12 days. The effectiveness, is what they call it in their documents, is 98%. That means 98% of people with which this device is implanted or they are infected with this device, once it is activated with the radio signal, 98% of people are dead within 10 to 12 days. 2% recover. And the recovery reasons are not fully known. It is often outside influences. It could be a malfunction of the device. Right now, our military wants to get it to 99%. It's at 98 right now. Basically, if this device has been activated in a population area, let's say they use a cell tower to send a signal out, you're going to see everybody around you, including yourself, sick with a very severe case of what appears to be the flu. You will go to the doctor, they won't be able to help you, it will continue to get progressively worse. Your lungs are going to fill up with fluid. In fact, that's going to be a symptom that will be very pronounced in all of these cases, and there's a reason for that. That is because the device, it enters the brain and it activates certain autoimmune responses that are indicative of a severe case of the flu. And this response is sort of like a runaway nuclear chain reaction. In other words, it causes your body to just absolutely melt down. So, again, it's very effective. It has been shown to work in 98% of the cases. And most of the time, it just looks like a very bad case of the flu.
But have you ever wondered what outer space smells like? Well, space smells pretty funny according to astronauts. Many of them say it has a smell similar to seared meat and hot metals. Some even say they smell like freshly baked cookies. But why would space smell like meat or cookies? Well, there's a huge amount of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in space, and these smell like burnt coal or ash. But what are hydrocarbons? They're the chief components of natural gases, and it's made up of only hydrogen and carbon chains, as the name suggests. And they're found in meteors, oil, and steak, which would explain why astronomers would compare it to foods they've had here on Earth. But one thing to note is that astronauts haven't actually directly smelled outer space, because they would have to remove their suits and the lack of air in outer space would kill them. However, when they return from being outside of the spaceship, astronauts have said that their suits and tools smell like a lot of different things. For example, legendary astronaut Buzz Aldrin said that the smell of space is similar to the ashes that are in a fireplace. Alexander Gerst, like walnuts and brake pads of motorcycles. Donald Petit, the smells produced by welding. Anousheh Ansari, burnt almond cookies. Clearly, the smell of space is all subjective. The reasoning for all of these very different responses all goes back to the elements in space, which gives it its aromatic qualities. Outer space is plentiful in carbon atoms and very low in oxygen atoms, giving it that smoky smell, which would explain why the majority of people who visited space compared it to things with sooty smells. If we are looking at specific planets, Harrison Schmitt has claimed that the moon smells like gunpowder, while astronomers predict that Venus